Dear Diary, today I take the next step in being an ADHD life coach at Indigo Hub. I can't believe it's happening. I want to build, create, and discover a place for us to truly be ourselves. I think this journey will be the Indigo Diaries. Dear Diary, welcome to the Indigo Diaries, and welcome to our exciting new series, Series 3, The World Through Our Eyes, with me, fully ready ADHD life coach, Natasha Hickling. The Indigo Diaries is a podcast for those who want to learn about ADHD through others' experiences. Welcome to Series 3. And I'm so really excited to start this series. I'm not even going to start with anything. I just want to get started. So as I said in the introduction, I will be mixing it up with 4 different types of episodes. And this is because I want to keep your interest, but I also want to keep my own, because guess what? We have ADHD. And I want to make it fresh and new for the listeners and really something different. And this week, I'll be starting with session 2, which is called Open Mind Session. And I'm really excited. And we're going to discuss topics of interest and have kind of reflections and awareness questions in the second half. So I'm really excited to get started. So without a doubt, welcome to the first session 2, Open Mind Session of Series 3. And I wanted to start fresh. So I started with a topic that I really think I keep seeing it occur, and it's really close to my heart, because this is probably this is basically my biggest target as an ADHD life coach, but not just because of that, but because for me personally experience and things that I've started to see and hear from different peoples, and that's transitions and ADHD. So today's topic is transitions. And it seems to be quite a huge topic I don't really think is talked about enough, especially when it comes in relation with ADHD. So transition, what is that? Basically, it's any sort of process or period of change from one thing to another. So it can be from one state, one condition, or anything. Just a period or a process of change from one thing to another. And kind of, how does that relate with ADHD? I mean, that can relate with life. But then when we put ADHD in the mix and life, it kind of creates all these different kind of challenges. So what challenges have I noticed with ADHD and transitions? And I call it the transitional years. Childhood to adolescence, adolescence to young adulthood is the transitional years, a transitional where not only developmental, but also so many different changes in life, changes in who you are. There are so many different elements. So I call this kind of the first transitional years. And obviously after young adulthood, which I count as like 30, there is a lot more. But my focus is really from kind of childhood to young adulthood. And I never really realized just how these kind of life changes can really affect someone, let alone an individual with ADHD. I mean, it's a whole nother mix of kind of challenges. And some of the biggest things that I see is obviously puberty, identity, support systems, education, relationships, independence, and kind of accessible to kind of life. But how do these kind of correlate with our ADHD? How do all these different kind of life changes kind of affect our ADHD, or our ADHD affect these lifestyles? And it's a huge thing, because we are not our ADHD, right? So we are, like, I'm Tash and I have ADHD, but ADHD is such a huge part of every part of our life. You know, some conditions are just different parts of life. ADHD impacts everything. And when life changes, transitions happen, it can actually exacerbate our ADHD challenges. And I mean, it can push our strengths, but it can really exacerbate our ADHD challenges if we don't have the right support, education, and things in place. And this can create what I like to call a shift, a tipping point, a break. I like to call it a shift. And these sort of shifts usually happen. Okay. It's a time where something happens, and then what you used to, what your old coping mechanisms don't work anymore. So let's say you're at school, you have an education, you're doing quite well, and then suddenly you go to high school or suddenly you go to university. It's a shift. And then your old coping things that you used to do, all the transition, then you have to transition into new things, new environment, new people, new expectations. Who are you in these things? And it creates like a whole different ball game. And then you've not only got to learn kind of what you're doing with your life, but then how does your ADHD show up? How does this show up? How now your new systems, your focus, your support systems, there is so many different things. And I actually find that this is an actual time when a lot of people get diagnosed, because a lot of the old coping mechanisms don't work anymore, the tipping point or the shift in the transition. And it seems to be a big thing that things just don't seem to kind of impact anymore. And then that can exacerbate your ADHD. And it's even harder when we're undiagnosed, right? Because we don't know what's going on. So then we have even more challenges in these transitions because we don't know what's going on. But this seems to be a huge impact of when people are diagnosed. That's when it really starts to become noticeable, or starts to become really challenging, or can affect every part of your life, because all the things that you kind of have got used to shift, transitions. And that's what it is about, transitions. And transitions happen all throughout our lives. Okay, it's not going to stop when you get to 30. It's not, this is it now. Transitions happen through our lives. But my focus and my passion is really with that kind of first transitional years, kind of 14 to 30. And that's what we're going to look at in the second half when we talk about our reflections. We're going to be reflecting about you, what transitions you've been through, and how does your ADHD show up? Because like I said, not everyone with ADHD, you'll never meet one person with ADHD that is the same. Everybody has different presentations, different challenges, different strengths, because we're all different people. Yeah, we have something in common, which is ADHD, and we all have different transitions. Yeah, it might be the same age transition, but what happens in that transition is completely different. That's why I kind of bring a very general topic, and then we're really going to pinpoint in the second half about how it's showing up for you, not for me, for you, because that's what this is about. I'm really trying to make this hands-on. So join us back after the break, where we're going to have a bit of reflection time. And we're out. If you would like any more information on Indigo Hub or our Indigo support group, then please check out our website below, or our link to our social media platforms, or email at indigohub.adhd@gmail.com. If you would like to offer any comments, feedback, get support, or if you're interested in the world hearing your story, then please reach out through any of our avenues. As said before, have a positive week. Check in again later. And we're out. Shh, the Indigo Diaries. If you didn't join us, welcome back. We're going to be talking about transitions. That's what we were talking about in the first half today. Transitions of life. Usually transitions happen all through our lives, but we're really focusing on those transitions from 14 to 30 and how that can affect your ADHD, how life transitions can affect your ADHD, or the other way around, how your ADHD can show up in these different things. So now we're going to go into reflection time. So this is really to evoke your awareness, to really have some time where you think about how this topic shows up in your life. So reflection time can be for yourself or thinking about someone you love. If you're listening to someone that you know has ADHD or you think has ADHD, then that's also okay. So for reflection time, I know what I like to do. I like to be in a really, really comfy place with some nice music on because I can't be in silence. Or I like to be walking. I'm very active. That's the H part of me. I like to be active. So wherever you find a place or find a time that works for you. So if you want to listen to the first half and then come back to this half, whatever works for you, works for you. I just want you to find a place where you can really kind of tune out and just have this reflection time for you. If you want to write things down, you want to listen and walk, anything that allows you to be reflective, I give you permission to do this now. Give yourself permission to have that 5-minute reflection time now. Okay, and we're going to start. Think back to a transition in your life or something that you're going through right now. If you're thinking back to a time, really try and go back to a time between the age of 14 to 30, a huge transition in your life. I'm going to give you some examples if you're stuck. It could be going from school to high school. It could be going to university, getting a new job, moving house, moving schools, getting a new partner, getting married, moving countries, any sort of transition that happens in your life, getting a year older, something that creates a shift from one thing to another. I'm going to give you a minute to think about that. Think about what was the actual transition that occurred in this time. What actually happened? If you want to describe it, then do that. But think about what actually occurred. What was the actual physical transition? Then I want you to think about how did that transition impact other elements of your life? Did it create a shift in all elements of your life or in some? Did going to a new school then start affecting your home life, start affecting your relationships? Did it create a shift in everything or just in that one thing of education? Now I want you to think about your ADHD or your loved one's ADHD. Did that shift or transition affect your ADHD challenges or your ADHD in any way? That's a very closed question. Did it affect you and your ADHD in any way, shape, or form? Challenges or strengths? Then I want you to think, how did the ADHD show up? How did the challenges show up in that transition? How did the strengths show up in that transition? But how did your ADHD show up? And then when you think about how your ADHD showed up, think about what you had in place to support that. So if you had challenges, what did you have to help support that? Did you have anything? If you didn't, that's okay. But just really thinking about, did you have anything in place and what was it? And I want you to think, did that support that you have in place or not have in place support you for the positive? Or did it not? If you need more time, that's okay. You can always pause. If you want to go back, rewind, go through this again. I just wanted to kind of give you those questions and give you that time, but go back and write this down. or you can look in the description below where all these questions will be. Now I want you to think about how you could use this knowledge or reflection to help in future transitions. The knowledge or the reflection that you've just had of a transition from the past or in the present, how could you use this knowledge of how your ADHD showed up? Did this transition impact other elements of your life? And what did it show up? And what did you have in place? Could this knowledge prepare you, support you, or give you knowledge of how to approach different transitions or shifts in the future? Sometimes looking back or looking at right now of what's going on and how your ADHD is showing up can really help in these transitions, because when we think we have our ADHD, we think, yes, we've got it. We're kind of living with ADHD, we're doing it. And then a shift happens and we go back to where we started. So really reflecting and thinking about, how did my ADHD show up in this? What did I have in place and what do I need? And I hope that gave you some reflection time, because I know when I went through this did. And I want to just say thank you. Thank you for giving up time to sit, to walk, whatever you've done, whatever you gave yourself permission to have that reflection time. Thank you for going through this and really thinking about these transitions, because it can be a huge effect on our ADHD and how we manage it. And when we look at it in that age of 14 to 30, if we're older than that now, when we look back, we can think of how that's kind of influenced our whole life. And if you're there now in that age group, you can set yourself up for the future. And that's my favorite part. Looking at things, learning from them, and then creating that change for future shifts. Because guess what? Transitions are going to happen if we like it or we don't. So join us next week, where we'll be dropping 2 episodes. Okay. And we're actually going to be I'm going to be dropping a top eye session, which is a quick tips and tricks session, which will probably be 5 minutes, and a guest from series 1. Yes, that's right. I've gone back to series 1 and I have a guest for you next week. Very, very special guest. So to end my session today, if you're interested in coming on as a guest for Pick My Brain sessions, have questions, dilemmas, or want to share your experience you would like to be advised on, or for series 1 where the world can hear your story, then please reach out through our social media avenues on email. Remember, I am always here. So as always, my encouragement of this week is this: when shifts and transitions in life shake you to the core, see that as a sign of the greatness that's about to occur. Chelsea Dinnan. I love that. See that as a sign of greatness that's about to occur. Give yourself permission to see that greatness occur. And one way to do that is to look back, reflect, and move forward. And I hope that I've opened your eyes or opened your mind in one way or another about transitions. I hope you come back, you learn, listen, and experience the world through not my eyes, but our eyes. That's what this is about. Why not, hey? Have a great week. Have a reflective week. Why not? And we're out. Dear Diary, as Indigo Hub's process goes on, it makes me stop and wonder, could there be more for us? More light, more experience, and more ways to see the world through our own eyes? I think this journey will be... Shh.